The morning Ryan Solis walked into the Harwick Group's private security tryout with his 7-year-old daughter beside him, the room went quiet in a way that had nothing to do with respect. It was the kind of quiet that comes right before people start laughing. Bella didn't notice. She was too busy gripping her stuffed rabbit, a floppy gray thing she'd named Captain, and staring at the floor-to-soiling windows that looked out over downtown Chicago 42 floors up. She'd never been that high before. Neither had Ryan, if he was being honest. He signed in at the front desk. The woman behind it glanced from him to Bella, then back to the clipboard and said nothing. But Ryan caught it, that split-second pause, that recalibration. He'd seen it so many times in the last 4 years that he didn't even flinch anymore. The waiting room held 11 other men. Most of them were built the way you'd expect, shoulders filling out their shirts, necks that looked carved from something dense. A few were ex-military, Ryan could tell by the way they sat. Back straight, hands folded, eyes scanning every room entry. 2 of them were talking quietly near the window. One was doing something on his phone. The rest had looked up when Ryan walked in, taken one look, and gone back to what they were doing. One of them didn't look away. He was the largest man in the room by a margin that felt almost theatrical. 6'4", maybe 6'5", with arms that didn't quite hang straight because of how thick they were. His name tag read Vance. He had the kind of smile that people thought was friendly until you realized it never quite reached anything behind the eyes. "You lose your way to the school run?" Vance said. A few guys chuckled. Not all of them, but enough. Ryan looked at him. "No," he said, and that was all. Bella looked up at Ryan. He gave her a small nod. "It's fine, don't worry." And they found 2 seats near the back. He hadn't planned on bringing her. The tryout had been scheduled for a Tuesday, which was one of the days Bella had a half day at school. Ryan's sister was supposed to pick Bella up and keep her until he got back. That was the plan. But his sister had called that morning with a migraine that had already made her throw up twice, and there was no backup. Not a quick one, anyway. Their neighbor, Mrs. Petrov, could take Bella in the afternoon, but not until 2, and the tryout started at 9. Ryan sat on the edge of his bed for 4 minutes after hanging up the phone. He'd been up since 5. He'd ironed his shirt at 5:30. He'd made Bella her breakfast. Scrambled eggs, the way she liked them, with the cheese melted in and not on top. And packed a rabbit in her backpack even though she'd told him she was too old to need Captain anymore, and he'd packed him anyway because he knew her. 4 minutes. Then he got up, washed his face, and said, "Bella, you're coming with me today?" "Where?" she'd asked. "Work thing," he said. "Job thing, you'll be good?" She'd looked at him with those serious eyes she got sometimes, the ones that made her look too old for 7. "I'm always good," she said. He almost smiled. "Yeah," he said. "You are." The Harwick Group was the kind of private security firm that didn't advertise. They worked with CEOs, with people in finance and tech whose names appeared in the kind of articles most people scrolled past. Their clients didn't want publicity. They wanted quiet, competent people standing between them and whatever they were afraid of. Ryan had learned about the opening through a former colleague, a guy named Pruitt he'd worked with years back, before everything changed. Pruitt had sent him a text 2 weeks ago, heard about a private opening. Harwick. They're looking for someone low profile. Figured you might fit the brief. Ryan had stared at that text for a long time. He'd been working as a delivery driver for the last 2 years. Before that, 18 months of odd jobs, security at a mall, 1 semester teaching a self-defense class at the Y, some contract warehouse work. He'd taken whatever paid and whatever let him be home when Bella needed him to be home. That was the math. That was always the math. He hadn't talked much about what he'd done before, not to most people. There wasn't much point. They called them in one at a time for a quick intake. Name, background, prior work in the field. Ryan waited while Bella sat beside him and quietly introduced Captain to the chair next to her, explaining in a whisper that the chair was Captain's friend now. When they called his name, Ryan leaned down and said, "I'll be back in 2 minutes. Stay here, don't move, don't talk to anyone you don't know." Bella gave him a look. "I know," she said. "I'm not for, I know you know," he said. He went into the side office. There were 2 people sitting at a table, a man in his 50s with close-cropped gray hair who introduced himself as Mercer, and a younger woman who was taking notes and didn't offer her name. "Name?" Mercer said. "Ryan Solis. Background?" "I have a résumé. I know. I've seen it. I want you to tell me." Ryan looked at him evenly. 12 years in the Army. Last 6 in a specialized unit. I won't go further into that in a general intake. I left in 2019. Since then, I've done private security work and some contract consulting. He paused. "And other things." Mercer's pen stopped. "Other things. I have a daughter. She's 7. Her mother isn't in the picture. So there were periods where the work I took depended on what was available around her schedule." He said it the way he said most things. Flat, without apology, without asking for anything. Mercer looked at him for a moment. Is that her out there? With the rabbit? Yes. Why'd you bring her? My childcare fell through this morning. I had a choice between coming late or bringing her. I decided coming on time mattered more. Mercer looked at the woman taking notes. Then he looked back at Ryan. We'll call you when it's your turn for the floor assessment, he said. Ryan nodded and went back out. Bella was exactly where he'd left her. Captain was still being introduced to the chair. But now Vance had moved his seat. He was 2 chairs closer, and he was watching Ryan walk back in with an expression that wasn't quite amusement and wasn't quite something else. Delivery background, right? Vance said. He hadn't lowered his voice. A couple of the other guys were listening, or pretending not to. Saw it on the sheet when you signed in. You've been doing deliveries, among other things, Ryan said. Among other things. Vance repeated it with a half smile, like he was tasting it. Sure, okay. I'm sure that's going to transfer real well to executive protection. He leaned back in his chair. It creaked. What'd you used to do before vaguely? Other things? Army? Huh. Vance nodded slowly, like this was barely interesting. Me too. Special Forces. What unit? Ryan looked at him. I'm not discussing that in a waiting room. Right, Vance smiled. He glanced at Bella and something in the smile shifted slightly. Must be tough, you know, showing up to something like this. It's with your little, he gestured, that your kid? She is, Ryan said. Talk, Vance said again, and the word had a texture to it that Ryan didn't like. Bella had stopped whispering to Captain. She was watching Vance with that same old soul expression she got sometimes. Vance didn't notice or didn't care. I respect it, Vance said, not sounding like he did. The hustle, really. But this isn't the gig for guys in a different season of life, if you know what I mean. No offense, just another gesture. You might want to think about what's realistic. Ryan said nothing. He sat down, he looked at his hands. Bella leaned over and said very quietly, just to him, He's not very nice. No, Ryan said, also quiet. Is he going to be there? The test thing? Probably. She thought about this. Are you nervous? Ryan looked at her. Something moved through him that didn't have a clean name. Something that was tired and clear and very, very settled. No, he said. She believed him. That was the thing about Bella. She always knew when he meant it. They did the floor assessment in a large open room on the same floor, mats down, equipment staged along one wall. Mercer stood to the side. 2 other evaluators Ryan hadn't seen before. They worked through basic drills first, reaction time, spatial awareness, controlled restraint. Ryan moved through them the way he did everything. Without wasted motion, without showing off. He noticed the evaluators making notes. He didn't try to read their faces. Then they got to the part where it mattered. Mercer explained it simply. It was a resistance and control scenario, voluntary, where one applicant would play the role of a threat and another would respond. The goal wasn't to hurt anyone. It was to see how people moved under pressure, how they thought, whether they panicked or performed. Each pairing was chosen by the evaluators. Vance had sailed through the drills. He was fast for his size, which Ryan had noted. He'd done the restraint exercises with a kind of cheerful ease that was genuine. He was good. Ryan could see that plainly, and he didn't need to pretend otherwise. Vance was genuinely good. When Mercer called their pairing, there was a moment, just a moment, where a few of the other men exchanged a look. Ryan caught it. The look said, "This is going to be short." Vance cracked his knuckles. He was doing it for the room, not for himself. "No hard feelings, man," he said to Ryan, already rolling his shoulders. "Seriously, you seem like a decent guy." "Thanks," Ryan said. "I'm just going to be honest, you should probably tap early. There's no shame in it. You've got a kid out there. Last thing you need is a shoulder." Ryan pulled his collar straight. He looked at Vance the way he looked at math problems, not unkindly, just clearly. "Let's go," he said. Vance came in the way big men usually did when they were confident, committed, full speed, expecting the impact to end it. He was strong and he was fast, and he'd probably ended a lot of encounters exactly this way. Ryan wasn't there when he arrived. It took 4.3 seconds. Ryan clocked it later in his head, not out of pride, but because timing was a habit. The redirect came first, minimal, precise, using Vance's own momentum like a door swinging on a hinge. Then the control hold, which wasn't about strength. It was never about strength, not at the level Ryan had trained. It was about geometry, about knowing where the joints wanted to go and where they didn't. About making a very large, very powerful person's own body give up the argument. Vance was on the mat. Ryan was crouched beside him, maintaining the hold, firm, not painful, but absolute. The room was quiet, not the same quiet as before. This one had a different quality. This one paid attention. Mercer said, "Release." Ryan released. He stood up, he stepped back and gave Vance room. Vance lay there for a second. Then he sat up. His face had done something complicated. Surprise, and then something working through the surprise, sorting itself out. He looked at Ryan. "What was that?" he said. It wasn't quite a question. Aikido Foundation, Ryan said. Modified for field use. He paused. You were fast, honestly. Vance blinked. Ryan had said it without irony, and Vance seemed to be working out whether that was condescension or just a statement. It was just a statement. Vance nodded slowly. Yeah, he said. Then after a beat, where'd you train? Long time, Ryan said. And a lot of places. They broke for 20 minutes. Ryan went back to the waiting room. Bella looked up from her book. She'd pulled a chapter book from her backpack because Bella always had a book and studied his face with that diagnostic look she had. You okay? She asked. Yeah, good okay or just okay? He sat down beside her. Good okay. She went back to her book. Then she said without looking up. Did you win? It wasn't really. He stopped. Yeah, kind of. She turned a page. I knew you would. He looked at her. How? Because you always look like you're the only one paying attention, she said, still reading. The other guys were loud. Loud people don't pay attention. You do. He sat with that for a moment. When'd you get so smart? He said. She shrugged, very 7 years old about it. I've always been smart. You just never ask. He almost laughed. He didn't, but it was close. Mercer called him back in before they called anyone else. The same office, same 2 people, but this time Mercer wasn't looking at the clipboard. Tell me about the unit, he said. Ryan looked at him. You already know, or you wouldn't be asking with the door closed. Mercer allowed something that wasn't quite a smile. We pulled your file, or what's accessible of it, which isn't much. He set his pen down. I want to hear it from you. Ryan leaned back slightly. He thought about what to say and how much, and decided that the amount that mattered was small and specific. 12 years. The last 6, I was attached to a joint special operations unit. Counterterrorism, primarily. Multiple deployments. I won't name theaters. When I got out in 2019, it was by choice. Not medical, not disciplinary. I chose to leave. Why? This was always the question. He'd been asked it so many times that he no longer had to think about the answer, only about which version of it he was giving. My wife died, he said, in 2018. Ovarian cancer. Bella was 3. I was deployed when she got the diagnosis, and I was deployed again for one of the last months. He said it plainly, without the performance of grief, because the grief didn't need a performance anymore. It had settled into him like weather. When I got home and we buried her, I looked at my daughter and I made a decision. She needed one of her parents present. That was the job. Everything else was secondary. The woman taking notes had stopped writing. You gave up that career to raise her, Mercer said. I didn't give it up. I just reprioritized it. A pause. You asked about the other work on my résumé, the delivery driving, the mall security. I know how it looks. I know it looks like somebody who washed out and landed soft. It's not that. It's someone who decided his daughter was the mission and ran everything else around that. He let that sit. She's 7 now. She's old enough that I can come back to work that uses my actual skills. That's why I'm here. Mercer picked up his pen. Not to write, just to hold. One more question, he said. The man you went up against out there, Vance. He's the best physical specimen we've seen in 3 rounds of this process. You dropped him in under 5 seconds. Can you tell me how Ryan thought about it? He came in expecting to use his size. That's a reasonable expectation. It works most of the time. But size works against you when someone knows how to redirect it. He was committed to the approach before he'd assessed whether it was the right one. He paused. Vance is good. I'd actually work alongside him. But he makes assumptions. In executive protection, assumptions are a liability. Mercer looked at him for a long moment. Wait outside, he said. Ryan went back to Bella. She was at the window now, standing on her toes to look out at the city, captain tucked under one arm. The morning light was coming in flat and white through the glass, and it caught the side of her face, and she looked, for just a second, so much like her mother that something in Ryan's chest moved in a way that was both painful and very, very ordinary to him now. He went and stood beside her. It's really high, she said. It is. Do people fall? No, the windows are sealed. How do you know? Because that's how buildings work. She thought about this. I'd be scared to work up here every day, she said, looking down at everything. Ryan looked out. The city spread out below them. The grid of streets, the other towers, the small moving shapes of people on the sidewalk below, their lives going on in whatever direction they were going. He'd lived in this city for 6 years. He'd raised Bella in the apartment 3 miles east of here, the one with the leaky faucet he'd finally fixed last spring and the neighbors upstairs who watched television too loud. You get used to it, he said. Do you? She looked up at him. Do you really get used to things, or do you just stop being scared? He thought about that. Really thought about it because Bella's questions deserved actual thought. I think, he said slowly, you can stop being scared of something and still be aware of it. The awareness is useful. The fear not always. She considered this seriously, like the big guy. Ryan looked at her. He was scared of looking small, she said. That's why he was loud. She paused. You weren't scared, so you were just paying attention. Ryan stared at her. "Bella," he said. "Yeah, you're going to be a lot smarter than me someday. Probably soon," she tilted her head. "I already am," she said, and said it so matter-of-factly, without a trace of brag, that he did laugh this time. A real one, short and sudden, and it echoed slightly off the glass. Mercer came out of the office 22 minutes later. He walked across the room toward Ryan with his hands in his pockets. That particular walk that Ryan had learned to read in rooms like this, the purposeful loose walk of a person who already knows what they're going to say and isn't in a hurry to say it only because they don't need to be. He stopped in front of Ryan and Bella. He looked at Bella for a second. She looked back at him with complete composure. "Nice rabbit," he said. "His name is Captain," Bella said. "Good name for a rabbit." Mercer looked at Ryan. "We'd like to offer you the position. It's a primary protection detail, our lead client, which I'll brief you on properly if you accept. The schedule is demanding, but it's structured enough that we can work around." He nodded toward Bella. "Family obligations. We've done it before." Ryan held the man's gaze. He wasn't surprised. "He didn't perform surprise," Ryan said. "We'll go over all of it, but I want to say something first." Mercer glanced briefly at the door to the hallway, where the other men were still waiting. He looked back at Ryan. "In 3 rounds of this process, I've seen a lot of men walk in here trying to prove something. Most of them, not all, but most. They come in with their arms wide and their volume up. They want to look like what they think we want." He paused. "You came in with your daughter and a résumé that looks like a decade of lateral moves, and you put Vance on the floor in less than 5 seconds without breaking your own posture. That's not luck. That's something that doesn't come from trying to look like anything." He stopped. "We want that." Ryan looked at Bella. She was looking up at him, Captain clutched in one hand. Her expression was careful and watchful and full of a trust so total that it sometimes still took him off guard, even after 4 years of being the only parent in the room. "I have one condition," Ryan said. Mercer waited. "If there's ever a morning when childcare falls through," Ryan said, "I need to know I can bring her with me until I sort it out. Not to the field, not to client sites, but to the office." He paused. "She's not a liability. She sits, she reads, she doesn't cause problems." "You saw that today." Mercer looked at Bella for a moment. "We saw that today," he confirmed. Ryan nodded. "Then, yes, I accept." They waited for the elevator in the lobby downstairs. Bella had Captain under her arm and was wearing the look she wore when she was processing something, slightly distant, mouth pressed together, thinking. Ryan pressed the button. The elevator hummed somewhere above them. "Dad," Bella said. "Yeah, that man, Vance. At the end. He looked at you different." Ryan glanced down at her. "Different how?" She thought about the word for a second. Like he decided to pay attention, she said, "After." Ryan nodded slowly. That was exactly what Vance had done. After Ryan let him up off the mat, Vance had stood, and there had been a moment, just a moment, where something in him had reorganized. Not shame, not bitterness, just revision, the look of a man updating his understanding of something. "Is that bad?" Bella asked. "No," Ryan said. "That's the best thing that can happen in a room like that." She thought about it. "Why? Because it means he learned something," Ryan said. "Most people, when they're wrong about something, they don't learn. They just find a way to be right in a different direction." He shrugged. "Vance isn't like that. You can see it. That makes him someone worth working with." Bella absorbed this. The elevator arrived. The doors slid open. As the doors closed, Bella looked at herself in the mirrored panel, at her striped shirt and her floppy-neck rabbit and her serious face, and then she looked at Ryan. "You're going to be good at this job," she said. Ryan looked at her reflection. 4 years of early mornings and school pickups and tight months and saying I'm fine when he wasn't always fine and being the one awake at 2 a.m. when she was sick and being the one at the school play and the one at the pediatrician and the one who learned how to braid hair badly and then less badly and then actually pretty well. 4 years of being the whole thing, the entire architecture of her daily life, and her saying you're going to be good at this with that absolute zero-doubt confidence, the way she'd said I already am upstairs. "Yes," he said. "I think so." The elevator descended. Below them, the city continued its ordinary morning, traffic and coffee, and people walking to wherever they were going. And Ryan Solis stood in a mirrored box 42 floors above it with his daughter and her rabbit, on his way down to the beginning of something, the weight in his chest just slightly, permanently lighter than it had been when he'd walked in.